Welcome to Reshair on ESPN 730. For the next hour, your host, Chris Reshair, will bring fresh air to your financial needs. Excite, educate, and empower you to make sound financial decisions. Chris is a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with Movement Mortgage, equal housing lender, originator license number 117266. Now, here's your host, Chris Reshair.
Welcome to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshair, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. Wow, we've been running the show about 2.5 years now here in Charlotte. I can't believe how time flies. And as always, the goal of Reshair Radio is to really empower and educate Charlotteans to make good financial decisions. But with those decisions that you have to be making, you need good education. And Reshair Radio tries to bring you expertise, local experts, guests from the community, you name it, to really help round out what we offer each and every week to our listeners in the greater Charlotte area. So anyway, this week, before we sort of jump into our intro, I just wanted to put out to our listeners that with the goal being to educate, my goal is really to not be talking about mortgage every day. I am a licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage, and my goal is to help lots of families become homeowners or position themselves with a refinance, perhaps better. But really, there's so many other things in your financial life that make a difference that you need to be paying attention to. So today's focus is going to be a little bit on credit. It's also going to be quite a bit on, financial health and wellness in terms of understanding mutual funds and exchange traded funds, et cetera. So we're going to bring some education around that topic. And this is a perfect time to introduce our expert contributor, Sandy Solomon with AXA Advisors. Sandy, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Chris. It's great to be back. I love doing this.
Yes, and we love having you because it's hard to find a financial planner with an awesome personality and great skills, right? So you definitely round out the show for sure. And I think our listeners understand that if our goal is to really help people make good financial decisions, I need to have other experts that round out our topics and professionals that can really add value to what we bring. So anyway, Cindy, as we sort of kind of kick off the show, why don't you sort of get your disclosures out of the way so that everybody knows that you're following compliance and all that jazz, and then we'll sort of jump into our topic.
Yes, Chris, thank you for that. And today, since we are going to be talking about mutual funds, which are registered securities, I've got a few extra disclosures.
How fun. This is the fun part, so try not to fall asleep if you're driving, okay?
Beg the forgiveness of the audience while we go through this. So it's important to remind our listeners that the purpose of our time together is to educate and is not to provide specific investment, tax, or legal advice. All of these examples are hypothetical. They are not a guarantee of investment performance and are not an endorsement, promotion, or offer of any particular mutual fund investment or financial product. Our listeners should always seek the advice of a financial professional, a tax advisor, or an attorney about their specific situation. Investing in mutual funds involves risk. Investment return and principal value will fluctuate, and shares, when sold, may be worth more or less than their original cost. Mutual funds are offered by prospectus, which contains more complete information about investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses, and which are available through your financial professional or the investment company itself. Please read the prospectus materials carefully before you invest or send any money. And finally, I am a duly registered and licensed financial professional here in Charlotte with AXA Advisors. That's AXA Advisors, LLC, New York, New York. Our number is 212-314-4600. And we are members of FINRA, the SIPC, and we offer annuity and insurance products through the AXA network. So thank you, Chris.
There you go. Isn't that exciting? I appreciate you sharing that. So as we sort of slide in, now that we've got the disclosures out of the way, and I will tell people that I actually am a licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage, and Movement Mortgage is a equal housing lender, and my license number is 117266. So there you go. Mine's out of the way, a little bit shorter, but Sandy, why don't, before we sort of roll into our theme for today, just tell people who you are and what you do.
Well, Chris, very much like you, I am really in the business of helping our clients, and they're mostly local area families and small businesses, just make smart decisions about the money that they have available to invest. And everyone earns money that some of that money will be used for their essential living expenses, and they'll pay some taxes, and some should be devoted to planning for the future. And it's that segment. It's helping people make smart decisions about retirement planning, about educating their children, paying for college funding, making sure that families are okay if someone dies or becomes disabled. All of those kinds of issues are the things we deal with every day.
Perfect. And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Chris Reshair, host of Reshair Radio, and we've got Sandy Solomon here with AXA Advisors. And if at any point you have questions about what we talk about today, feel free to give me a quick text message, shoot me a phone call, whatever it might be, and we'll circle back with you at the beginning of the week to address any questions you might have. The way to reach me is 704-277-4463. Again, it's 704-277-4463. So, Sandy, we talked sort of preparing for the show a little bit about the subject of mutual funds or fund type investments like exchange traded funds. We call those ETFs, right?
Yes.
As we talk about clients that we were working with, are there would you consider mutual funds a good investment? That's my question to kind of get us going.
Well, Chris, that's a question that I hear a lot from our clients, and I think it's probably due to the fact that so many people now have some kind of exposure to an investment product like a fund, and it's usually through a retirement savings plan like a 401k, or maybe they have an IRA of some type.
And that's what I see consistently when I take applications for clients. They have checking and savings and a 401k.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so those 401ks always have investment choices, and they're presented kind of on a menu usually.
Right.
And those choices are most typically some sort of a fund. And so people ask me, are these mutual funds a good investment? And I think that's an interesting question, but I don't think it's exactly the best or maybe the right question to ask. And the reason that I say that is I don't mean to split hairs or confuse our listeners, but I would really prefer to talk about whether or not mutual funds are a good way to invest.
Okay.
So do you see that distinction?
Yeah, absolutely. I do.
Okay. So a particular mutual fund may have been a good performer or a not so good performer in the past, depending on what time frame you may have selected to look at. But as with all investing, past performance is never an indicator or a guarantee of any future performance. And I hope you saw that disclosure added right in there.
Yep, we did.
Another one of those disclosures. So I don't think we should confuse the actual performance of a particular mutual fund with the question of whether or not a mutual fund can be the right way for investors to work with investments.
Okay, so I kind of get your point here. You're really just trying to educate our listeners on how to understand what a mutual fund is more than whether or not, which one is going to be the best to invest in. It's really kind of getting back to the topic of last month where we talked about financial literacy and understanding what it's all about.
That's right, Chris. I want our listeners to know what mutual funds and ETFs are and how they're designed and how they can be appropriate for certain investors in certain situations. And the problem that I hope we're solving with this dialogue this morning is the idea somehow people say to me that they view this fund, maybe it's their 401k or IRA, they view this fund as something that's just on a piece of paper, which makes it a little esoteric. So I hope
he's using big words again.
That's a financial advisor word. I apologize to the listeners at home. I want our listeners to see how tangible these products are. That's what I was trying to do. So we'll talk a little bit about how they're designed and why they're appropriate for certain investors, and maybe even start with a little history lesson.
Okay, yeah, we love history. So really, at the end of the day, you're saying mutual funds aren't really a new concept because we have a history, right?
That's exactly right. In fact, they're nothing new at all. The general idea of mutual funds started all the way back in the 1700s when some Dutch merchants created a trust, and they used that trust to make investments in business and trade. And the reason why they wanted to do that was to allow them to go out and take on some smaller investors. And so rather than having to deal with just royalty, just the wealthiest people, these merchants wanted to create a pool of money to use to invest in business and trade, and it turned out to be a really great idea.
Well, yeah, obviously it's living on today. I mean, and it also can spread your risk, right? It can also allow more people to buy into it where you're not spending all of your dollars. You're getting a group of people using a little bit of dollars from everyone, so you can keep doing other things too. So, I mean, there's whatever type of mutual agreement you have to invest, it can work. There's lots of different elements that can benefit those investors. So where to even begin? I know from my perspective, I think my company, the company that I work for at Movement, I think we've changed 401k providers 3 or 4 times since I've been there. Every single time I'm trying to figure out, well, what is the best fund to pick out of my 401k, or if I want to invest, maybe not inside of my 401k, how do you pick? I know there's like tens of thousands of
Right.
mutual funds.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges that we face every day with our clients. So I do want to take a minute, though, if I could, to step back and finish that little history lesson.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the credit for what I would call today's modern day mutual fund really probably goes all the way back to the Massachusetts Investors Trust, and they're in Boston. They created the first truly modern mutual fund in 1924. So the idea, starting back in the 1700s, evolved, and in the early 20s, the MFS company was born, and that fund went public in 1928. And today, you can still invest in that fund from MFS.
Wow, that's cool.
So I would say most of our listeners have probably, if they know much about mutual funds, have heard of MFS. It's one of the fine mutual fund companies that we do business with. And they're
Pretty
still
cool.
in operation today. So it wasn't until the 50s that the number of mutual funds available to the public ever even topped 100.
Wow.
So it wasn't until almost 30 years later that there were 100 fund choices. But what's interesting is that today there are easily over 10,000 mutual fund choices, and that doesn't even begin to include the number of ETFs that are available today. Obviously, kind of a bewildering array of choices for the average person to consider.
Absolutely. Partially why we work with good people like you too, because this is hard. I have a hard enough time keeping up with my lawn, let alone 10,000 mutual funds to choose from. But we're going to take a quick break, folks. Again, we've got Sandy Solomon with Axe Advisor here. We're talking about mutual funds. Do you know what they are? We're talking about EFTs. Do you know what they are? If you don't, you need to stay tuned because we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This is Chris Reshatar, your host of Reshair Radio. As a mortgage professional, we interact with several industry-related professionals, and we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I have a choice to select a closing attorney either to purchase or do a refinance, I choose John Ringer with Hutchins Law Firm. He is a legal professional and he covers commercial and residential transactions. More than just a closing attorney, John wants to be your attorney for life. He can provide you insights you need to make accurate and informed legal decisions. As a Charlotte native, John has witnessed the tremendous growth and development of our city and region. As a part of Hutchins Law Firm with more than a quarter century of experience and 400 years of collective combined legal experience, they have what you're looking for. They have offices in Charlotte, Fayetteville, Wilmington, and Columbia, South Carolina. Please give John a call if you need an attorney, the right attorney, at 980-275-9810. That's 980-275-9810. Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshatar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. And we have expert contributor, Sandy Solomon, back again in the studio with AXA Advisors. And the goal really to have a great advisor like Sandy on Reshair Radio is to bring financial topics that I don't have expertise on that can really help our area listeners really benefit from his knowledge and experience. And so I'm really excited about our show topic today because we're really talking about understanding what a mutual fund is, and maybe even a little later in the show, we're going to be talking about exchange-traded funds or ETFs. And these are things that sometimes at a holiday party, you hear people talk about and throw things around and everybody shakes their heads and pretends like, yeah, I know exactly what that is. And well, maybe you really don't. And I'm here to help you with that. And so is Sandy. So we were just talking before the break. Sandy did a nice job at explaining really the history sort of and the basic concept of what a mutual fund is. And I think one of the challenges that we have today, Sandy, is that I have listeners out there that may be able to invest and have a desire to sort of spread the risk. But when you're looking at mutual funds, how do you know? There's just so many of them. How does our listener really understand how to choose wisely?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before we actually deal specifically with that question, though, I wonder if we could take just a minute and let me highlight how I think about the concept of a mutual fund, and this is to solidify in the minds of our listeners what it is that they're investing in.
Great.
And so that it does seem more tangible to them than a piece of paper. And I want to, say up front that this is going to be a really high-level, simplified, and hypothetical way to look at it. But hopefully, by doing it this way, it'll make it easier to understand. So, Chris, let's say that you and I have a small amount of money that we'd like to invest, but it's not really enough yet to deal with all the requirements of individual stocks and bonds. Okay, so it's you and I, and let's say that we then go out and we find a bunch of other people with the same situation, a bunch of other people that have a small amount of money. What we could then do is we could throw all our money in a pool. We could pool all our money together, and that would give us a much larger fund than we would have had individually to go out and invest directly in some stocks and bonds. So you with me so far?
Yep.
We've pooled our money. And so then pretty soon what happens is we realize that we don't know as much as we thought we did about how to choose these securities that are going to be in our portfolio, but we do know someone who's a real expert, and we decide to hire her to manage the fund for us. And of course, this means that we pay her a salary and we pay her expenses, et cetera. So we're going to call her our money manager or our fund manager. So she then begins to build a staff and hires other analysts and back office people. And what they do together is take care of all the trading and all the accounting. And most importantly of all, they take care of doing all the research that's needed to
figure out where to invest the dollars.
That's exactly correct. Yeah. So you see where we're going with this.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
good.
It does sound pretty cool. So is there a catch? I mean, you make it all sound really easy.
Well, and yeah, the concept is easy, but in real life, it's probably not all that easy. But at least now we understand what it is, that we have a bunch of investors that have pooled their money and hired a professional manager. The manager makes those security selections. And those securities, by the way, Chris, they are held in trust on behalf of our investors. And then what makes a mutual fund different is that this group of investors with their money pooled in the fund, they don't really own the underlying securities. They own a proportional share of the pool. Okay. So they own a proportional share of the trust itself rather than this array of stocks and bonds.
Okay.
So, that makes sense?
That's interesting, yeah.
Okay. So in essence, what happens is the fund manager just runs the portfolio, and of course they pay themselves a management fee or an advisory fee, and investors can buy more shares or they can sell their shares. And the way a mutual fund works is that the fund itself distributes the shares to shareholders, meaning that when you and I go and purchase our fund shares, we buy them directly from the fund. And then when we're ready to sell, we sell them back to the fund. So in financial advisory language, that word we use is redeem. The fund redeems the shares. And so they have invested in a professionally managed portfolio that's, and you've heard me say before, diversification is the cardinal rule of investing. So we're well diversified. We're striving for this to work well over time. It's potentially better in some ways than if we were to go out and select general securities and try to manage those on our own.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's so okay. I kind of get that, but what's next?
Okay. So I probably should say here that this is where the help of a properly registered financial professional can really be valuable. Remember earlier I mentioned that a mutual fund company hired some brokers to help round up more customers for our fund.
Yeah.
Okay. So those brokers or financial professionals are duly trained and registered and licensed, and it's really important for the listeners to know that you're dealing with a professional that is belongs to a firm and is registered as an investment professional.
Yeah, it's credentialed.
Yep. So within the firm, we get a lot of support, and we have selection tools that are provided by the firm, and those tools can guide us through a selection process or a screening process. So now we have this big pool of available funds to choose from. The real question is, how do you sort through, how do you narrow down the field enough that you have confidence that you're investing in things that are suitable for you?
It's a good match, right?
Yes, that's right.
Risk level, et cetera.
And you just mentioned one of the most important variables. The variables that I think about are how long, meaning what's the time horizon? How long do you plan for this money to be invested? Is it just for a year maybe, which changes the dynamics of everything, or could it be for 3 years or for retirement? How much risk exposure are you comfortable taking? What's your
tolerance level?
How well
and that
do you
may
sleep at
depend
night?
on your age, right?
It very well may depend on your age. That's exactly right. It probably depends just as much on your investment experience. So whether or not you're accustomed to the idea that things go up and down,
right,
and how comfortable you are with that.
I don't like them when they go down so much.
Right, right. Unfortunately, there aren't any funds that don't periodically go down. That's
right.
one of the issues associated with investments, right? Yeah. That's one of the reasons people come to us is for reassurance.
Right.
During those times. So at AXA, what we do is we use this goals-based process, and we use a process of elimination to narrow down the categories that don't make sense for our clients from a risk perspective or a time perspective. And then the fund companies provide us with the detailed information that we need on the products, and they provide us with the prospectus material and the expense and performance information. And we also have a couple of third-party screening tools and research from leading analysts that we can refer to.
Right. That really, at the end of the day, you're just trying to service your client, helping them balance the risk levels, the timeline of how long they have to invest their money, and using the tools that you've been provided, whether it's through the mutual fund management companies or other tools that your company can use. And not uncommon for any other financial institution that does this kind of work that would help you walk you through this process. So before we, if you're just tuning in, excuse me, I am your show host, Chris Reshatar, and we're here today talking with Sandy Solomon with AXA Advisors, and we're really talking about mutual funds, what they are, understanding really the basic concept of a mutual fund, and we're going to slide into understanding exchange-traded funds here in just a minute. But if you've had any questions along the way, please feel free to give me a call or shoot me a text message and say, I need Sandy, right? I want you to utilize, the reason I bring in local experts is you're getting good information, good education. And if you have questions about how maybe a mutual fund works and you're thinking about a product that might work for you, I want you to lean on me so I can connect you with great resources like Sandy. Just text me, I need Sandy. The number is 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. Okay, so we wanted to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about what you had mentioned, an ETF. So my wife is well-read on investing. She knows all kinds of stuff about this stuff. She throws out ETFs and these sorts. I'm like, what the heck's an ETF? Now, this was a while ago. I've known for a long time what it is. But at the end of the day, I don't know if the listeners understand some of these financial terms. So you're here to educate us, Sandy. Why don't you have at it?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And I'm sure some of the listeners probably do know what ETFs are. But for those of you maybe that haven't, that have heard the term but don't really know what it means, an ETF is an exchange-traded fund. And they're really interesting. They're very similar in a lot of ways to mutual funds. They're similar in terms of the idea itself, because they are still dealing with pooled money.
Okay.
But ETFs are quite different in that they actually trade all day long on the exchange, unlike mutual funds. So ETFs are marketable securities. They are usually designed to track some index, and that index might be a commodities index, or it might be a bond index, or a basket of assets.
So it's like a larger marketplace that you're investing in instead of
Well, it's
when you talk about inside a commodity.
It is a more generalized way, yes, a more generalized way of doing it. And the ETF itself is a security that is traded all day long on the index. So what's different about that than a mutual fund is that mutual funds settle every day at the close of business at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the exchange, so they are not being traded every day.
Interesting. Very good. And Sandy, what we're going to do here is we've got to take a quick break. We've got one more segment to go here. So again, you're listening to Chris Reshatar with Reshair Radio. We're talking with Sandy Solomon from Axe Advisors. Again, we are hitting mutual funds, exchange traded funds, et cetera, educating you here today. So we've got another segment to go. So please stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Hey, Chris Reshatar here from Reshair Radio with Movement Mortgage. Are you still sitting on a high interest rate mortgage loan? Are you thinking about consolidating, paying off some of those credit card debts, or maybe doing some home improvement? Now's the time to call because interest rates are still at a 40-year low. My number is 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. I can also be found at themortgagegenius.com. Movement Mortgage is an equal housing lender and MLS license number 117266.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshatar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. Again, Movement Mortgage is an equal housing lender, license number 117266. If you have not been listening to our show earlier, we have expert contributor Sandy Solomon back in the studio again this month, and we're talking with him about mutual funds. We're talking with him about ETFs, or exchange-traded funds, and he's done a great job at sort of laying out a foundation for understanding what these products or financial products are, helping our listeners here in the greater Charlotte area understand their finances just a little bit better. That is part of our goal. But Sandy, with you sort of wrapping up our last segment here on your topic, we were introducing the concept of an exchange-traded fund or an ETF. So why don't you pick us back up where we left off and maybe just reintroduce us and keep it going?
Sure, Chris. We were talking in the last segment about how ETFs are similar but also different from mutual funds. And so I'll remind the listeners at home that an ETF is really more like a stock in the respect that it's being traded all during the session every day, and that prices for ETFs vary with each trade. And that's different from the way a mutual fund's price is determined, because a mutual fund settles at the close of business every day, and it's based on the net asset value of the fund's holdings at the close of business. And so an easy way for the listeners to understand what I'm really trying to say here is,
break it down for us.
Yes, this will make it simple.
I'm here to keep them straight, folks. Go ahead.
If one of our clients asks us to place a trade for a mutual fund, whether we do it at 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, those customers are all going to purchase the shares at the same price, the price at the end of the trading session. And we call it's marked to the market at the end of the day. And if they call at 10 o'clock and we place a trade for an ETF, the price is going to be different at 2 o'clock. Now, right. I'm not suggesting that one is better than the other or that somehow there's an advantage or disadvantage.
It's just different.
It's a very material difference. That's exactly right.
Right.
Okay. So then let's go into what ETFs are designed to do. So ETFs are designed to provide access to a broad market. That's the way that I look at it. And they're usually based on some sort of an index. And the listeners at home, I'm sure a lot of them have heard of the idea of, say, for instance, the S&P 500. That's an index, or the Russell 2000. Or maybe it's the EFA index, which is an international index. Okay, so the ETF is designed to track that index, even though it's not possible to invest directly in the index. The index is a hypothetical basket of investments, if that makes sense.
Right.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So mutual funds, to differentiate again a difference, are a lot more likely to be actively managed rather than being based more or less on a static index. And so the reason that that's important is because not every idea in the world is represented in an index. Not every company in the world is represented in an index. And so indexes are static. They don't change very much, and they are more or less passive. And I think that that's an important distinction is active versus passive. Index funds don't require the services of a money management team or the costs of doing research. And so the idea behind an index fund or an ETF is that you have access to this broad market, but at a lower cost to the investor, which can be an advantage.
Sure.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Right. Absolutely. I think in the past, people have fussed about mutual funds because of the high costs at times. I know that's changed over the years, but
right. And the costs of mutual funds have, I would say, historically probably been driven down by competition. That does happen.
One of the advantages of having 10,000 to pick from, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So getting back to fees and expenses, it only makes sense that the ETF would have lower fees and expenses than an actively managed mutual fund because they require actively managed mutual funds require so many more resources.
Yeah.
Okay. Analysts and
research
possibly,
team.
yes, research teams that could be all around the world.
Right.
Operating in different countries. And it is true in a general sense that the fees that investors pay do count against performance, okay? And that's an important variable when you're selecting investments for your portfolio. So I would remind our listeners at home that we need to base these decisions on your individual needs and your individual goals, your investment objectives, your circumstances, your time horizon, your investment experience. It may make sense to consider a combination approach, meaning that we would have some index funds or ETFs with low expenses plus some managed funds that may find some investment ideas that potentially haven't been part of some index.
Perfect. So if you're just tuning in, you are listening to Reshair Radio. I am the host, Chris Reshatar, and we've got Sandy Solomon here from Axe Advisors, and we've just really sort of wrapping up our conversation around the ETFs. So that's just as a reminder, if you're investing, whether it's mutual funds, exchange traded funds, whatever, it does involve risk. Investment and the return on principal value will fluctuate, and shares, when sold, may be worth more or less than their original cost. So if you're considering mutual funds as an investment, you should contact a qualified financial professional. And I just happen to know a good one. If you want to give me a phone call at 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. And again, if you are interested in working with a professional advisor and you know you need to make that jump to really hit your professional goals, please text me and say, I need Sandy. Text me, call me, and tell them I'm happy to connect the two of you at the beginning of the week. And Sandy will absolutely spend some time with you on the phone or sit down and have coffee with you and go through a great plan. So, Sandy, this is a perfect time to share with our listeners as we sort of wrap up this segment a little more about what you do. I think you have three main areas of your core areas that you focus on as an advisor.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I do. And before I jump into that, I don't know if guests on the show are permitted to pay compliments to the host, but you did a very nice job handling that last little set of disclosures.
Well, I don't know.
I appreciate
Well, thanks for the compliment, but yeah.
I appreciate you doing that for me. So Chris, in my practice, we essentially do three things. We have a lot of clients that have young families. And so for the clients with young families, we assist them in the creation of a financial plan. And that involves analyzing the goals that they have. And those goals are things like funding college educations for their kids, planning for the income needs of survivors in case someone dies or becomes disabled, in case something bad happens, and then investing for their financial independence in the future. So that's our young family segment. For our clients that are at or near retirement, people that
would be for those of you that have some graying hair.
Yes, that's correct. For those clients, we help them construct a portfolio and a retirement plan that can help them strive toward a predictable, sustainable, and dependable income so that financial worries don't interfere with enjoyment of their life. And that we find is a very important service that we provide. It's research shows us that that people that have a dependable and predictable income are actually happier. They are happier, and according to the research, they live longer.
Yeah. I mean, financial stress is not a fun thing to be subject to especially as you're planning your retirement. If you don't have a plan, then your life is going to be stressful. It really is.
That's right.
I have several family members that are perhaps maybe didn't make the best financial choices or plan when they were younger, and as a result, just are struggling with day-to-day happiness because the finances are not in a good spot. And that's kind of sad.
That's important to me, Chris. When I got into the business, I didn't realize that I knew the work we would be doing would be important, but I didn't realize it would be important to the fullest extent, that it would actually help people's lives matter more, and it would help them have persistently better health and longer lives. It's the reason I've stayed in the business, is because I love the satisfaction and joy that I get from helping people with those important issues.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then there's one last thing that we do and we love doing. A lot of our clients own small businesses, and they have a lot of needs. So with our clients that are business owners, we help them with their employee benefit plans, their employer-sponsored retirement plans like 401ks and things like that, pensions. We also help them with business succession strategies. Every business owner that I know someday dreams of retiring as a result of having owned that business, and a lot of times that business needs to either be passed down to a younger generation within the family, or it needs to be sold somehow. So we help them with those business succession strategies, and then also with estate planning strategies, making sure that people have carefully thought through what's going to happen when they're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you really sort of cover the gamut there, Sandy. And really, at the end of the day, if you need this kind of help, I think Sandy is a great option for you to consider. So again, my number is 704-277-4463. You can text me or call me and just say, I need Sandy, and I will make sure that I connect the two of you so that you can kind of make sure that your financial plan is on track. I will say briefly, right before we take our next quick break, that we've got a small segment coming up with Adam Kunda at National Credit Care. We're going to be talking a little bit about credit. Different things that you can do to make sure you understand what your credit is and how to improve your credit, and really just understanding the basics. A lot of people, whether you're buying a car, even getting homeowners insurance, buying a house, you need to understand your credit. So that's a whole nother segment coming up here in just a minute. So Sandy, thank you again for coming back to Reshair Radio this month, and we'll see you next month with a new topic. And again, we'll be right back with Adam Kunda at National Credit Care. And I'm signing off for this segment as your host, Chris Reshair.
Did you know it has been reported that an estimated 80% of Americans have credit inaccuracies on their credit reports? Most people that have either inaccuracies or existing items that can be negotiated or adjusted do not know what their best score could be until they have found a new home, or buying a new car, or applying for a credit card. Then it's too late, and they have to accept a higher interest rate or lose the opportunity altogether. The time to work on improving your credit score is before you need it. Whether you have a 440, 640, or even a 740 FICO score, there is always room for improvement. The National Credit Care team is comprised of individuals dedicated to helping the millions of consumers plagued by credit inaccuracies, errors, and fraud. It is our mission to help inform consumers and alleviate the stress of working with creditors and credit bureaus. Together, we can maximize your scores to get the best interest rates possible and save you money. Call now, 303-747-6390. That's 303-747-6390. Or visit us at www.nationalcreditcare.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshair, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. As you know, if you've listened to our shows before in the past, the show really is about helping our listeners, helping future home buyers, even existing home buyers, to really have a better understanding of finance, of real estate, mortgage, insurance, of
life insurance, whatever it may be. And today we're actually going to help educate you a little bit more about your credit. If you've listened before, we have Adam Kunda here with National Credit Care in the studio. Adam, welcome back to the show.
Oh, Chris, thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah, so Adam is a repeat offender, I call it. You've heard me say that before if you listen to the show, but he is a regular sponsor of Reshair Radio. We got to get Adam laughing, right? Hopefully our listeners laugh too, but he is a regular sponsor of Reshair Radio with National Credit Care, and we really appreciate them being a tool to educate our consumers on credit, because while my nickname is The Mortgage Genius, and you can find me at themortgagegenius.com. I am not the creditgenius.com, right, Adam?
That is correct.
Although you should see if that one is available. That would be a good one to get.
There's a funny story. There's a credit genius who was down in Wilmington, and this was many years ago, but just due to illegal practices, he's no longer in business. So
his
I think
domain,
it's available.
His domain name might be available. All right.
Sure.
So, we were sort of prepping for this show, Adam, and we'll weave into the theme, but sort of help us get there, right? So, I really felt like there was this misconception about, what a consumer credit counseling person does. And I think our consumers out there really believe that, they're just disputing everything that's negative, and that's how I get a better credit score. And I really think that is a misconception in terms of what a credit repair agency does.
Sure. So let me just be very clear. A consumer credit counseling service is somebody that would be lumping your payments for you, making payments for you on accounts. Totally fine. A credit repair firm is somebody
credit counselor.
Correct. Credit counseling, even though it sounds very similar, is somebody who's dealing specifically with a credit score. A lot of times I'm doing my meetings, we kind of have to separate what is credit scoring and maybe what's best for that, and also what's best for your finances. I'm not a financial wealth manager. What I'm telling you most likely to do is best for your credit score, and sometimes that's counterintuitive for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So at the end of the day, in terms of, as we weave into our theme, in terms of what people can do to really positively impact, things they can do on the positive side, tell us first a little bit about who you are, what National Credit Care does, and so forth.
For sure. So credit repair is the name of the game that we're playing. But realistically, I think when most people hear repair, they're thinking about healing something that has gone wrong. So that would be your late payments and your collections. And that's something that we look at for sure. And we can help you remove that from time to time, depending on the information and the creditor. But what the other part of repair is, from my standpoint, is looking at the positive elements of our credit and seeing what we can do to place the extreme maximum value on the actions that we can do on consumers. So we're getting the most return on those points. Okay?
Got it.
So, we can get points by alleviating some negative information, but we can also get a lot more points, and it's a lot more, by shaping and molding and strengthening positive credit.
Really, it's the difference from, it's almost like healing the wound versus weight training to get stronger.
Oh, that's a
right?
great way to put it.
Healing the wound is the negative, but the weight training is doing the positive, right? Getting it moving in the right direction.
Yeah, maybe you sprained a muscle that needs to be repaired, or strengthening the muscle that's already been repaired is a big section of this. Realistically, if we were to just place a pie chart, 65% of our credit score is positive credit. It has nothing to do with the negative marks that we've placed on our report. It's just about what are we doing from a positive standpoint. I think a lot of people are wondering why their scores aren't going up, but not adding any new positive credit to the report. There's no new payment history that's positive, which is all kind of helps build up this robust credit score. So even on this program, a lot of programs have Dave Ramsey talk about a debt-free lifestyle. And I'm not here to say what he's saying is wrong, but I am here to say that we have a credit scoring system that is a wonderful system. We can go to other countries and not have the availability to increase our wealth in such a fast manner. So in the way I would look at it, Dave Ramsey is going to say don't have any debt, zero debt. Zero debt equals zero credit score. So therefore, you would never, ever have anybody help offer you a loan, whether if that was going to help you or not is the thing.
Right. You can't control that part. But at the end of the day, I think, we are one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and
Correct.
access to credit is a piece of our economy.
Correct.
And it enables people to stair-step their wealth
Sure.
with it if used responsibly. Sure.
So look at how easy this is, Chris. I mean, again, 65% of the score is positive credit. Almost half, 30% of our overall score is just, do you have a credit card or not? So Dave Ramsey would say have no credit card, and you would get no credit scoring points and 30% of your score. I would say, let's have a credit card, but let's use it at the extreme minimum that it's asking for, which would be 1% of the limit on the card. So if we have a $1,000 card, I'm literally asking a client to charge $10 on their card. Now, I understand that's debt, and Dave Ramsey would say no. But if you can't manage $10, then you're probably not able to manage having $0, right? So I'm looking for clients usually to just get revolving accounts, prescribing a $10 usage on the card, and just making an on-time payment, which does two things. Shows that they're responsible, $10, and shows that they're on time, which is a huge benefit. A lot of people have credit cards they may not be using. Therefore, you are not getting the benefit of using the card. You're not getting the positive payment history, where if you have 5 cards, you could have added 5 positive on-time payments to your score that month, and most people are doing 1 of those 5 or even 0 of the 5, or have no cards altogether, and again, back to 0% of 30% of the score. So,
well, from a mortgage loan officer perspective, occasionally I have a guy that'll call me and say, hey, I don't believe in credit.
Yeah.
I listen to Dave Ramsey, and all those things are great.
Sure.
But I want to buy a home. But if you really look at the housing market, just in our Charlotte metro market, the average sales price of a home is around $240,000 now.
Okay.
Right. So where are you going to find a home that you can qualify for to pay cash for? Right. Because the Dave Ramsey model is try to pay cash for as much as you can. Right. Don't have credit. He does believe in going into debt for a mortgage. He's got a mortgage company he's making millions on, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But you still have to have a credit score, right? So as a general rule, when I'm counseling, and you can tandem behind me on this, I'm counseling people have 2 open and active credit cards for a minimum of 12 months and maybe 1 installment loan, which can be a student loan, it can be a small car loan, it can be a small personal loan, something that's got a fixed payment with an end date. That payment doesn't change, you can't reuse. That's called installment debt. And that is what really is ideal for generating a pretty solid credit score that meets mortgage lending guidelines at the same time. Because really the show is twofold, right, Adam? I want you to help our customers understand credit, but also how that then tandems into how do they buy a home down the road.
You're totally right. I think one of the biggest things you're talking about is just diversity of credit. You know, you didn't just say one credit card and that was it. You mentioned an installment account. Our ceiling for our credit score is really indicative of what we have on the report. So usually the starting point is revolving accounts, getting a credit card. And I see a credit score will max out at sometimes maybe like a 700 or a 710 credit score just with those revolving accounts. And they're saying I can't get any higher. Well, if you go out an auto loan, that can start to push your ceiling up even higher. It can maybe get you to 750, 760 credit score. Great rate on a mortgage. Boom. That's how you get up to the 800s. If you don't have the diversity of credit or these different types of accounts, you're kind of minimizing that ceiling, and you can't get much higher.
The flip side is worse. The flip side is worse when they have only installment loans and no credit. I don't know about you, but at least what my experience time after time, the customer seems to be stuck in the mid 600s
for sure,
without any credit card debt, and and they'll say things like, "But I don't believe in credit, and I don't want a credit card," and either they don't want to be tempted by it, which I understand that,
correct,
or their grandfather said, "Never do that. It's the devil, right? The credit card is the devil, and don't do it," and they just said, "Okay, I better not do that."
Correct.
But then it's holding back their ability to get a decent interest rate on their mortgage.
For sure.
To maybe even get other debt.
For sure. I had a great friend in New Orleans last week. I've been just kind of giving him some friendly tips, and he said, hey, my mother just took out an installment account for me and is going to be paying the money back every month just with that money that they took out. How much is that going to help the score? And I said, very minimally. We still got to get revolving accounts, and they still haven't gone and done so. So, again, 30% of the score is just having credit cards or not. So if you have the credit cards, we're using them for a very small proportion of the limit. I recommend 1 to 2%. I've heard numbers of 30 or 50%. Let's just go 1 to 2%. Let's make it really easy on us. For my cards, I use on the 15th of the month. I use 1 for breakfast, I use 1 for lunch, and 1 for dinner. All 3 of my cards just show that balance every month. I pay it on the due date. Very simple. I do post an 800 plus credit score because of simple practices like that. Very, very simple to do.
Yeah, I mean, heck, everyone's got a Netflix account. How much is Netflix?
Exactly.
$7.99, $8,
for sure.
$10.
Unless you got the plus or the premium,
right,
$15, which is still perfect for us.
Like if you don't want it, just like literally put your Netflix on it once a month and let that be your. I pay that bill instead of paying directly to Netflix. I just pay it off my credit card, and there you go.
For sure.
So there's definitely ways to control if you're concerned about maybe your inability to keep your spending in check. Keep it simple. Put something that's on a simple auto draft. Pay it off every month, and really that's going to help you generate those points, build your credit. These are all positive things. It's not we're just getting and deleting and taking off erroneous items. There's things that our listeners really should be paying attention to here, because you can do positive actions to really impact your credit score, which is really our theme for today.
For sure. And you're saying put it on an auto draft. I would also put it on an auto pay too. So then literally you just have a card that's building credit scoring points from multiple different perspectives, and you don't even do anything. Yeah. Very easy to do.
You don't even have to keep, I mean, if you set something up on a monthly bill that's charging you, then you don't even actually have to keep the card with you.
Correct. Just pay it on the
so
due
that you're
date.
not tempted. You just set something up as an automatic bill on there, and you put the card away, and then you pay the bill on auto pay from your bank.
And I would put this on auto pay on the due date. Very specific. If we're using 1% to 2%, we are paying that on the due date, not before or not after.
Okay.
Very specific to that type of practice.
There you go. Great.
Perfect.
So any others quick? We got about a minute and a half here before they cut us off.
Oh, I just really can't stress it enough. Have a credit card. If you do not have one and are scared, it's really not hard to do. Give me a call, 720-556-1959. I'll talk through your personal situation and figure out what card would be best for you and educate you on how to use that so it has no impact on your life. It makes it easy.
So you're going to actually guide the customer potentially to find a couple of sources for some cards, because sometimes people will get rejected if they don't have them.
For sure. And there's some companies that we know just from experience that are declining about 3 people every year that we send them to, and we're sending maybe about 40,000 people over. So 3 of 40,000 declined.
Pretty good percentage.
Pretty good ratio
we'll
for us. So, typically a guaranteed approval on most of the cards we'll send you to, and a very low entry cost for that card. The bank is going to require a security deposit to $300. We'll help you out.
Awesome. That's great.
Yes, sir.
So we're just about ready to wrap up another awesome show of Reshair Radio. So I want to make sure, real quick, one more time, your phone number and email, Adam, if somebody wants to call for a free analysis on the credit report.
Yes, sir. 720-556-1959, or my email is adam@nationalcreditcare.com.
Perfect. And just so that our listeners understand, I'm also in the mortgage business. It's our listeners that actually feed me business that I like to take care of. So if you have any mortgage-related needs, you get pre-qualified on a house before you go shopping, do that early, do that up front, or you want to refinance, whatever it might be. I handle both sides of the coin there. But let me give you my number. It's 704-277-4463. That's 277-4463. You can also find me at themortgagegenius.com. That is my mortgage application website, themortgagegenius.com. And if at any point through this process there's something here on the show that you missed, you needed a different phone number, need to get some counsel from something you heard earlier, you can always listen to any show, Reshair Radio. We post on the Reshair Radio Show website, or I can't even say it, at the www.reshairradio.com. That's reshairradio.com. So it's been another great show. Thanks you for listening. We will be back next Sunday at 10 o'clock. Adam, thanks again. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Chris. Have a great Sunday, guys.
See ya.
Did you know it has been reported that an estimated 80% of Americans have credit inaccuracies on their credit reports? Most people that have either inaccuracies or existing items that can be negotiated or adjusted do not know what their best score could be until they have found a new home, or buying a new car, or applying for a credit card. Then it's too late, and they have to accept a higher interest rate or lose the opportunity altogether. The time to work on improving your credit score is before you need it. Whether you have a 440, 640, or even a 740 FICO score, there is always room for improvement. The National Credit Care Team is comprised of individuals dedicated to helping the millions of consumers plagued by credit inaccuracies, errors, and fraud. It is our mission to help inform consumers and alleviate the stress of working with creditors and credit bureaus. Together, we can maximize your scores to get the best interest rates possible and save you money. Call now, 303-747-6390. That's 303-747-6390. Or visit us at www.nationalcreditcare.com. Sports fans know that the key to winning the big game is going in prepared. Right now, houses are selling fast. So if you're in the market for a new home purchase, don't just be prepared, be Movement Mortgage prepared. Charlotte's leading mortgage lender, Chris Reshatar at Movement Mortgage, will tee you up with a free, fully underwritten upfront pre-approval. Shop for the home of your dreams, already backed by an upfront pre-approval at Movement Mortgage. Call Chris today at 704-277-4463 or find Chris at www.themortgagegenius.com. Go into the game prepared with Chris Reshatar of Movement Mortgage.
When choosing an insurance agency, you want a company you can trust. We are an independent insurance agency that can protect your personal assets, including your home, your business assets, as well as health and insurance needs. A true one-stop solution provider. We do not work for an insurance company. We work for you. As an independent insurance agency, our duty is to our clients' best interests. It is our responsibility to provide you the best service and the best coverage at the best possible price. You will have the added benefit of working with agents who understand your needs. After visiting our website, we will schedule an exploratory appointment to discuss your specific needs. Please visit our website at www.movementinsurance.com. That's www.movementinsurance.com.
You've been listening to Reshair with Chris Reshatar, a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with Movement Mortgage, equal housing lender. Originator license number 117266. Learn more online at themortgagegenius.com.